Coming up on Arirang News. President Yoon embarked on his trip to the U.S. on Monday to attend the NATO summit, which is for the third consecutive year. Ahead of the meeting, Yoon will stop in Hawaii for a security briefing at the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Heavy downpours pounded central and southern regions of the country, leaving serious flood damage. Torrential rain is expected across the country until Wednesday. As part of an effort to seek a breakthrough in a prolonged medical dispute, health authorities have decided to scrap all plans to take administrative steps against trainee doctors who have been on a walkout for around 5 months.
Welcome to 9 p.m. edition of Arirang News. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. President Yoon is heading to the U.S. today to attend the NATO summit later this week. Our Oh Soo-young spoke with a former U.S. national security official, Victor Cha, to hear insights on South Korea's role in global security, especially with the alignment of Russia and North Korea seen in recent weeks.
South Korea is emerging as a vital player in global security as President Yoon takes, quote, courageous steps for peace and democracy amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Moscow's military collaboration with North Korea. That's according to Victor Cha, Senior Vice President for Asia at the Center of Strategic and International Studies. Speaking to Arirang News ahead of the NATO summit this week, Cha spotlighted the role of South Korea in global security as the country was invited to the annual meeting for the third consecutive year. The focus of the 3-day meeting in Washington, D.C. would inevitably be Ukraine. But more broadly, countries will address the strengthening alignment between authoritarian powers like Russia, North Korea, China and Iran, which blur the boundaries between Indo-Pacific and transatlantic security. NATO and its 4 Indo-Pacific partners, South Korea, Japan, Australia and New Zealand, plan to adopt a strong statement against Moscow's treaty with North Korea to aid each other militarily in the face of aggression.
So I think it's very clearly a direct threat in Europe because this collaboration is allowing Putin to use ammunition at very high rates on cities and civilians in Ukraine, as well as on the battlefield. This NATO summit, I think more than any other, will show how the two security theaters are connected. So just as allies in Asia like Japan and Korea have been helping to defend Ukraine, European partners will have to be critical supporters of peacetime deterrence in the Taiwan Strait, on the Korean Peninsula, in the South China Sea.
Cha said the IP4 countries and the G7 bloc could help bolster intelligence sharing and slap additional sanctions on Russia and North Korea, given the futility of such efforts in the UN Security Council, where Beijing and Moscow hold veto power. While there are no plans for a 3-way meeting between the leaders of South Korea, the US and Japan during the NATO summit, Yoon's office said Friday that it is open to all possibilities. Cha emphasized the need for a trilateral collective defense declaration against the Russia-North Korea axis.
I would hope that they make some sort of collective defense declaration, that the security of one is tied to the security of all. This is something that the United States has wanted the 3 allies to do for quite some time. For domestic political reasons, it's been difficult. But what happened between Putin and Kim really is kind of a clarifying moment in terms of geopolitics and geostrategy, and the allies need to assemble in response to that.
Going forward, as South Korea's role grows in global security, Cha acknowledged the need for bipartisan support for Yoon's foreign policy to become a responsible global actor that stands up for freedom, democracy and human rights.
If Russia wins the war in Ukraine, and if China takes over Taiwan, neither of those things are good for South Korea. What we often like to say, and I don't know how true it is anymore, is that domestic politics stops at the water's edge, meaning that as much as political parties fight at home, once they're abroad, they're united. So obviously, it would be nice to see bipartisan support for South Korea's foreign policy.
He said Seoul is gaining recognition for its humanitarian assistance and wartime support for Ukraine and its plans to aid Kyiv in reconstructing the country.
So this really is Korea stepping out on a global stage. It's welcomed, I would say, by every country in the world to see Korea, the 12th largest economy in the world, playing this very important role. So I expect when Yoon goes to the NATO summit, I suspect he'll get a lot of respect from the European leaders for what he's been doing in Europe to help European security in defense of democracy. I think he'll get a lot of credit for that, and he deserves it. He's doing things that are pretty courageous. They're not popular domestically, but they appear to be things that he believes in, and that's what leaders do.
As a guest speaker at the NATO Public Forum, the South Korean leader is to express Seoul's commitment to leading efforts for peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific and Europe as a key member of the free world. He is also expected to issue a strong warning about the growing alignment of Russia and North Korea and seek security cooperation on a global scale. 오수영, Arirang News.
Before attending the NATO summit, President Yoon has warned that whether South Korea provides lethal weapons to Ukraine depends entirely on Russia. This came during a written interview with Reuters on Monday, where the president specified that Seoul's decision will be based on how a new military pact between Moscow and Pyongyang plays out. He said, quote, military cooperation between Russia and North Korea poses a distinct threat and grave challenge to the peace and security on the Korean peninsula and in Europe. He also called North Korea a, quote, menace to the international society, and that he hopes Russia decides which side of the peninsula is more helpful to its interests. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, South Korea's Navy is partaking in the world's largest multinational drill and also taking on a leadership role for the first time. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung is on site.
The Rim of the Pacific exercise, the world's largest international maritime drill, is currently underway in Hawaii. 29 nations, 40 surface ships, 3 submarines, over 150 aircraft, and more than 25,000 personnel are training in and around the Hawaiian Islands until August 1st. Hosted by the U.S. Third Fleet, the biennial RIMPAC exercise began in 1971 to ensure the safety and security of the world's oceans. RIMPAC 2024 is being held under the theme Partners, Integrated and Prepared. The aim is to build relationships, enhance interoperability, and contribute to peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Taking part in this maritime exercise for the 18th time is South Korea. Around 840 sailors and Marines from South Korea arrived in Hawaii last month. The country deployed 2 guided missile destroyers, the Chunmugung Isun-shin and Yulgok-ii, as well as the Cheonjabong tank landing ship and the Ibomseok submarine. And for the very first time, a South Korean commander is serving as RIMPAC's Deputy Combined Force Maritime Component Commander.
I am successfully carrying out my duties as Deputy Commander of the Combined Forces Maritime Component Command in RIMPAC 2024. Through this exercise, we will raise the status of South Korea's Navy by improving Joint Force Command and performance capabilities.
The commander of U.S. Carrier Strike Group 1, which includes the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier the Carl Vinson, says South Korea's leadership role in RIMPAC sets another great example of interoperability.
Of course, very significant leadership by Captain Moon as the Deputy SIFMIC Commander to help direct all of our naval forces, not just my task force, but the amphibious forces, the maritime patrol forces, and everybody participating in the exercise. So a very significant opportunity, and great to see the Republic of Korea in that position.
Visitors from around the world came to Pearl Harbor to tour ships from different parts of the world. Almost 5,000 visited South Korea's vessels.
I always see the ship of Republic of Korea on the Instagram page, and I always admire that. And it's so good to be here in person today and to learn about the history and to be on the ship that is been at RIMPAC since 1990.
South Korea will be taking part in various drills until July 28th. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Hawaii.
The South Korean Air Force is set to join a biennial multinational exercise led by Australia later this month. 6 F-15Ks and around 100 troops will take off from an airbase in Daegu on Wednesday to join the exercise Pitch Black. During the 7.5-hour flight to an airbase in Darwin, Northern Australia, the fighter jets will be refueled mid-air 5 times using the KC-330 tanker transport aircraft. The Air Force said Monday that this will be the first time that its fighter jets will be refueled in flight by a South Korean tanker in order for them to participate in a multinational exercise without a stopover. 16 countries, including the U.S., Italy, and France, also plan to join this year's exercise Pitch Black, which will take place for 3 weeks from July 12th to August 2nd. North Korea commemorated the 30th anniversary of its founder's death on Monday, with Kim Jong-un and other key figures in attendance at an event. State media reported that the North's leader visited the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, where his grandfather and father's bodies lie in state, and attended the ceremony that took place in Pyongyang. The memorial takes place every 5 years, and while some experts predicted that this year's event could be scaled down in line with the process of idolizing Kim Jong-un, it proceeded as is customary. North Korea's premier was there alongside other key figures, and the party secretary read a memorial declaring that Kim Il-sung is, quote, an immortal image of the leader of the people. Heavy rainfall warnings have been issued nationwide as monsoon rains continue soaking the country. There have been multiple reports of damage, while many people have been forced to evacuate their homes. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
Torrential rain across central and southern regions of the country has resulted in a lot of flood damage. As of Monday morning, 197 people in Gyeongsang-Buk-do province in the south have been forced to leave their homes and shelter in government-provided facilities. Rescue services have also been busy with emergency personnel saving 8 residents in Andong trapped by an overflowing river near their village. An emergency text alert for heavy rain was issued for these areas, which saw a downpour of 103 millimeters over 3 hours during the early morning, the first time such an alert has been given outside the capital region. The authorities predict that more people may need to be evacuated as roads could become submerged due to continued rain. Residents living nearby Yeongju Dam have been advised to move to safe locations as the Korea Water Resources Corporation expects water levels to rise rapidly. With downpours of between 30 to 50 millimeters per hour expected throughout the rest of the day, the local government is currently tallying damage wrought to infrastructure and farmlands. Warnings of possible landslides in mountainous areas due to the heavy rain have been issued in central regions. 78 residents of Chungcheongnam-do province were evacuated to nearby town halls due to the increased risks of landslides, while 1 person has already been reported missing. Further reports of damage to infrastructure such as roads, street lamps and farms are coming in from all over central regions of the country. According to the Presidential Senior Secretary for Public Relations on Monday, President Yoon called for thorough preparation for this year's monsoon season. The Korea Meteorological Administration forecast that the capital region could experience heavy rain starting Monday night, and the country could see 120 millimeters of rain between Tuesday and Wednesday, before it subsides towards the end of Wednesday. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
In other news, the Korean government has withdrawn administrative penalties against trainee doctors who left their workplaces amid the months-long conflict over the medical school quota expansion. Yoon has the latest.
It's been 5 months since trainee doctors left their posts, and on Monday, the government announced it will not take any administrative actions on all trainee doctors. This includes the suspension of medical licenses, regardless of whether they choose to return to work. The Ministry of Health and Welfare made the announcement following a meeting at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure headquarters.
After reviewing feedback from training sites and assessing the current medical field situation, the decision has been made, effective immediately, not to impose administrative penalties on trainee doctors, regardless of their return status.
With the recruitment period set to start on September 1st, hospitals need to know how many trainee doctors will return to their posts so that they can plan how many new residents to recruit. The government is looking to ease the return policy for those who have resigned, so they can apply for the second half of the year. The current regulations prohibit residents who resigned during their training period to return to the same position within a year.
Training hospitals should finalize resignations and confirm vacancies by July 15th for the recruitment starting on July 22nd.
Last month, the government withdrew various penalties issued to trainee doctors to provide them with some flexibility to return to their duties. However, as of Thursday last week, only 8% of the total 13,000 trainees were at work, which is only 91 more than before the government postponed the medical license suspension. In addition, on Monday, the government promised to speed up improvements in the training environment for trainee doctors, including gradually reducing the maximum working hour limit from 36 hours to 30 hours. However, the dispute over increasing the medical school quota for 2025 remains unresolved, despite the government finalizing the decision over a month ago, as trainee doctors continue to oppose it. Yoon, Arirang News.
Korea's economic progress remains moderate despite tangible gains in exports, amid a number of lingering internal and external risk factors. Park Gun-woo has more on the latest assessment by a local think tank.
South Korea's overall economic improvement remains somewhat modest despite exports recovering. That's according to the monthly economics trends report for July released on Monday by the Korea Development Institute, a state-run think tank. According to the report, exports jumped by over 5% on year in June, mainly due to robust shipments of ICT products. Though that was a smaller jump than the previous month due to fewer working days, export figures measured on a daily basis saw a bigger rise than May. And the country's trade balance saw a surplus of $8 billion in June, which was over $3 billion higher than the previous month, as overall imports shrank due to lower domestic demand. The KDI's report also showed that all industry production in May saw an on-year increase of 2.2%, down 1.1 percentage points from the month before. Despite strong performance for the chip sector exceeding 18% growth, lower production in automobiles and electrical equipment led to the weaker growth rate for total industrial production. And the think tank said the continuous high interest rates attributed to poor domestic demand. Retail sales in May fell by 3.1% on year, mainly due to low sales in automobiles and apparel. Investment for equipment and construction also both saw on-year drops. The KDI also mentioned external risk factors, including the volatility of oil prices due to geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, along with uncertainties in monetary policies globally. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Foreign investment in the South Korean stock market reached a record high for the first half of this year. Data from the Financial Supervisory Service on Monday shows that offshore investors net purchased around $16.5 billion worth of listed local stocks in the January to June period. This is the largest amount on record for a 6-month period and is mostly driven by robust demand for local semiconductor stocks. June also saw foreign investors maintain their buying trend for the 8th consecutive month. Meanwhile, Korean airliners carried a record number of passengers on their national and international routes during the first half of this year. Data from Seoul's Transport Ministry show over 47 million passengers flying to their respective destinations on board Korea's 10 airline companies, up almost 30% on year. Fueling the trend are low-cost carriers such as Jeju Air and Chin Air that have been targeting passengers on short-haul destinations amid high inflation. Should this momentum continue into the latter half of the year, pundits believe the total number of passengers on domestic airliners will surpass pre-pandemic levels. Samsung Electronics' largest labor union started its first ever general strike on Monday. With around 6,000 participants, the National Samsung Electronics Union began a rally this morning near one of Samsung's business sites in the city of Hwaseong in Gyeonggi-do Province, and said the strike will last for 3 days. The union also said it aims to distract business operations as around 80% of the participants work in manufacturing and development. If the labor union's requirements, mostly related to payment raises, are not negotiated, the next strike starts on July 15th. In France, A left-wing coalition is taking the most seats in the parliament after voting on Sunday kept the country's far right away from power. Yet, given the absence of a tangible majority, pundits say France has been thrown into an unprecedented scenario. Choi Soo-young explains.
France's left-wing coalition, the New Popular Front, has won 182 seats in the country's National Assembly, making it the largest party, but short of the 289 required for an absolute majority. The far-right National Rally took 143 seats and finished third, while Macron's centrist Ensemble Alliance recovered strongly from disappointment a week earlier to win 163 seats. The first round of parliamentary elections on June 30th saw France's far-right National Rally won 33.2% of the vote, while a coalition of left-wing parties, the New Popular Front, finished second. French President Emmanuel Macron's Ensemble Alliance finished third. Experts analyzing the results following voting on Sunday say that French voters are still cautious about the far right, and that appears to have driven a turnaround in fortunes compared to the week before. And with no majority, the French parliament becomes a hung parliament, putting France in political limbo with no clear path to forming a new government. That may be all the more crucial as France is just days away from an appearance at a major NATO summit in Washington and just 3 weeks out from the start of the Paris Summer Olympic Games. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, long considered Macron's protege, announced he would resign from his post on Monday morning. In what seems to be a veil swipe on Macron's decision to call for a snap election, Attal said he didn't choose for the French parliament to be dissolved. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
The shortage of labor in farming is a major problem in South Korea. Various technological developments have been made towards overcoming this situation, and now, for the first time in Korea, an unmanned automated agricultural production complex has been established in the city of Naju in the Jeollanam-do province. Yoon reports.
This tractor is unmanned, but it moves along the field automatically and prepares the land for farming. After completing its task, a drone returns to its base to switch out its battery and to get refilled with pesticide. In the mini greenhouse where seedlings are raised, robots take care of the seedlings and organize the seedling trays. From seedling management to crop harvesting and supplying water, the various robots carrying out these tasks are controlled in the control room of this high-tech, unmanned automated agricultural production demo complex.
We plan to show the core essence of smart agriculture through this unmanned automated demo complex. Moving forward with smart agriculture, I believe we can come up with such innovative measures to reduce production costs as well as labor shortage problems.
The unmanned automated agricultural production demo complex has been operating since 2020 with an investment of around $28.8 million. Its main goal was to create a smart agricultural model. It is the first digital agricultural complex in the country to integrate AI technology.
Smart agriculture can also be an alternative to overcoming climate change. So in the current reality of agriculture in rural areas, smart agriculture may be an important direction for us to go in.
The agricultural population is not only declining, but is also aging. The setup of unmanned automated agriculture production complexes in such rural areas is expected to become an outpost for open field smart agriculture. Yoon, Arirang News.
Starting from the beginning of the week, rain is pouring everywhere. More rain is expected tomorrow and Wednesday. Seoul will have up to 80 millimeters of rain, and many other places in the Jeollado provinces and the northern parts of Gyeongsang-buk-do province will see more than 120. However, many places in Jeollanam-do province and Gyeongsang-do provinces will be in the low tomorrow. Currently, landslide warnings have also been issued for the Chungcheong-do provinces, northern areas of Gyeongsang-buk-do province, and some parts of Jeollabuk-do province. Please refrain from approaching woodland areas. Tomorrow, most areas will start the morning at least 22 degrees Celsius. It will move up to 28 in Seoul, Chuncheon, Gwangju, and Daegu, 29 degrees. The rainy season will continue throughout the week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for today. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 9 a.m. Korea time.
There is no greater blessing than to have